Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and Weiss Advice here on YouTube. In this video, I want to be talking about one of the most important techniques and biggest secrets to getting an amazing sounding master. And it's not what you think. We usually think of things like wideners, or mid-side compression, or EQs, or fancy exciters, or whatever, coming together to do something special and magical, and there's room for all that. For sure, those things can contribute, but I would say this is much more important and much bigger than any of that, and that is changing your perspective. If we can hear things in a different way, we can approach things for translation and identify things that are more problematic or need to be brought out, and that is what's going on here. So I have this record that I did a mix, and you can get these trackouts from Pro Mix Academy. This is from Daryl Thorpe's course, so all the links are going to be in the description. Read the description, it's all in there, and you're going to get tons of other good, really cool videos. But here I've got Master Plan pulled up, and this is just limiting the record with some basic settings on. I'm going to play it down without any of my processing, then I'm going to turn the processing on, and we'll start pulling apart how I was able to do it. Now, does it sound good? Yeah, I think so. I think it sounds pretty good. Does it sound amazing? Maybe, maybe not. Let's turn on my processing. And you'll notice suddenly that everything is more audible, clearer, smoother, more balanced sounding, but without changing all that much. And that is kind of one of the cruxes of mastering, is being able to change everything without really changing anything. Just making it kind of sound better without making it sound different, which in and of itself is a little bit paradoxical and difficult. So how did I do it? How did I arrive at the processing, and what was the processing? Well, the way that I arrived at this processing is by something that was really, really sharp on the part of the Master Plan team's design work here, which is all these different monitor controls. The dim, the mono, the band, the phone, the NS10, or the N10, I guess, as it is. All of these change the way we hear the record, and they're going to expose things in a different way. This is very, very similar to the way that I use VSX, right? I use these guys here, the virtual monitoring system. You know I can't figure any of this stuff out. How I use these headphones and the VSX software to listen in different environments, so I can check how it sounds in a car, check how it sounds in a club. All of that is for the sake of changing my perspective, so I know how things are going to translate. That's what this section is about as well. So the very first thing that I'm doing here is using some compression. This is from a company called Kit Audio, and I don't even know what it's really emulating, but it sounds cool. I decided it needed some compression when I switched over to dim. Dim is going to reduce the level quite a bit. So I felt it all sounded good, but I felt like it could use a little bit more forwardness in general, and I also felt like I was really only hearing the snare. Like, I'm hearing everything, but like it doesn't all sound bold and strong the way I would want it to when the level is down. So that's where the compression comes in. So So you notice that when I bring the compression in, the snare kind of stays in the same place, that driving guitar on the right stays kind of in the same place, but the vocal, the hat, even to a certain extent the kick, and some of the other rhythm parts all kind of move a little bit forward. So it's not like a ton of compression here, it's only like a dB and a half or something like that, but effectively all the small stuff is coming up ever so slightly, making it feel a little bit bigger. And that's really easy to identify when you're monitoring very quietly, so this dim control is a very easy way of doing that. Now, obviously, you could also just turn the level of your monitors down. That's fine too, but I mean, you know, we're moving up the list here. So the next thing that I want to listen on is the monofold. I felt like there was a huskiness in the vocal that was more obvious in the monofold, and also all of those hats that are pretty present when everything's spread out kind of disappear in mono a little bit. Like, not totally disappear, the cymbals still stay present, but all the shakers and little subtler hi-hat hits, they kind of all go away. So this EQ is compensating for that. I'm attenuating a little bit around 300 Hertz, and I'm adding a little bit around 12K, just to kind of make it all feel a little bit more cohesive in mono. Now, I'm not going to go in order anymore here. I'm going to jump to the next few moves here, because this is subtle EQing that didn't change a lot, but became sort of obvious in certain contexts. So the first thing is if I switch over to phone mode, this is where my first EQ move came in. So this is kind of emulating what it would sound like if somebody was playing out of their like iPhone speaker or something like that. It becomes very, very bright and harsh, and specifically there's almost this like sound that's just constantly there. So ever so slightly, I'm taking out a little bit of this presence, and I'm talking about like minus 0.35 dB. So it's really just cooling off. I guess it was around like 4.6, so between 4 and 5K, and it's a subtle change just so that when somebody's hearing it on a phone, it doesn't sound like it's slicing your ear off. Now, it is a little bit of a negotiation. It's all a very subtle thing. Like, it's not, we're not going to go with the expectation that this is suddenly magically going to sound good on a phone. If we start to make it sound really great on a phone, chances are it's going to sound horrible everywhere else, because a phone is such a nuanced and specific playback mechanism. It's not really realistic to the majority of playback mechanisms. But to ignore the fact that some people are listening to music on their phones, I think would be foolish. So it's just enough of a cut to kind of cool things off in the harshest area. And that's all I'm really trying to do with that move there. Now, next, let's listen on the NS10s. In general, I think that sounds pretty good. Maybe there's a little bit of like extra boing coming off of the snare, like in that 700 Hertz kind of range, but it's really like on the fence. I'm not so sure. Let's check it in bandpass mode. There's like a pong sound kind of coming off of the snare. It sounds a little husky, so just a slight modification here to get rid of that pong sound on the snare, which is around 800 Hertz. Now, ever so slightly, I feel like on the N10, things feel a little recessed in the mids, so I'm doing just a very broad, very slight boost, a 0.25 dB boost, broad range, you know, wide Q here from 600 Hertz, just to kind of give a little bit more presence to the mids.
The weekend, every time you feel the flame.
So basically, these are all very, very subtle changes, right? Like the biggest one here is this dip that's happening around 700 hertz. And I mean, that's like what, half a dB? It's half a dB with a narrower Q, and it's a proportionate Q, so maybe it ends up being like a dB and a half, something like that. It's a very, very subtle change. All these changes are very, very subtle. I would not have made these changes were it not for the different monitoring options that I have. And just by cycling through them, I noticed little things here and there. Now I know that this is going to have a better translation because of these tiny little nuancy things that are separating good from great. So being able to change your perspective on things is like, that is the secret sauce to getting a good master, I think, more than anything else. If I were to attribute it to only one thing, it would probably be that. Obviously, it's also the technique, your own ear, your skill set, all those kinds of things. But gosh, when you can hear things the way you need to hear things, it really helps everything along. All right, if you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification so you get notified. If you want to join Weiss Advice and become a member where you get access to weekly webinars, all of my tutorial archived library, which is mixing with reverb, mixing with delay, mixing with distortion, saturation, the genre-specific tutorials. There's a whole bunch there, plus access to the Discord community, the trackouts, all of the other little perks along the way, things like contracts, paperwork, vendor forms, W-9s, all that kind of stuff. It's all in there. If you want to get access to that, the link is going to be in the description below. And lastly, you know what we say here at Weiss Advice. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.